Hi, it's Dr. Gianna Reams, and the title of this video is Alexander Never Said That, along with maybe a couple of things that Alexander might indeed have said. In fact, what you're seeing on the screen, this particular quote, is part of what inspired me to initially make some TikToks and then go on and start a YouTube video to debunk things. The internet's full of all sorts of crazy stuff, both about history and particularly about Alexander the Great. The more famous the person is, a lot of times the more stuff accrues to them. And quotes are just part of it. But this particular one I have seen all over the place with various backgrounds. So I picked the one with the lion because it was pretty. I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. Yeah, Alexander did not say that. Okay. There's another out there that's almost as popular that I have seen, and this one is there is nothing impossible to him who will try. Also, did not say. This one, I would rather live a short life of glory than a long one of obscurity. This one, I actually know where they got it from, and it's not Alexander at all. In Homer's descriptions of Achilles, uh, it states that Achilles made this choice, that he would rather live a short life and have undying fame than a long life of obscurity. And of course, as Achilles was admired by Alexander, one of several heroes. By the way, the hero Alexander admired the most was not Achilles. That's another topic for another day. It was Heracles or Hercules. Heracles is the Greek version. Hercules is the Latin version of the name. So we know at least kind of where this came from, and at least those first three, I would say, yeah, he might not have said them, but he might have admired it. And I'm going to come back to the first one and tell you who that initially is attributed to. Then we have this one. There are so many worlds, and I have not yet conquered even one. He did not say this either or anything like it. Um, then we have this one, and they get kind of progressively. I've just picked some of them, and I'm kind of going from things that he didn't say it, but he might have agreed with it to, I don't, yeah, no. Whatever possessions we gain by our sword cannot be sure or lasting, but the love gained by kindness and moderation is certain and durable. This is from somebody's sermon, and they needed a famous person to hang it on. Okay. He never said that, and I don't think he would agree with it either. So then we have this one, which is even more baffling to me. Definitely never said it. True love never has a happy ending because there is no ending to true love. Yeah, no, that was not a concern of Alexander's. Now, I do want to go back to our first one, the one that kind of, if you will, started it all, and talk a little bit about this particular quote and where it came from. So, where did this one come from? It shows up in a group of writings, which I mentioned in my first set of videos, and I was talking about other sources that mention Alexander, not the big five historians, but other ones that are still around that discuss Alexander, at least in bits and pieces. And I named a group of writings by Plutarch. Plutarch is the author of the Life of Alexander, and he's also author of a whole lot of essays that have been gathered together under the umbrella called the Moralia. And this comes from his sayings of kings and commanders. It's quite long. It's in volume 3 of the Moralia. And what it actually says is this. He, not Alexander, was wont to say that an army of deer commanded by a lion is more to be feared than an army of lions commanded by a deer. So, who actually said that? It was attributed, and notice I'm saying attributed, to an Athenian commander named Chabrias. And if you want to look it up, it's around section in the Moralia 187D. Okay. Or actually, that particular quote, yeah, it is 187D. And keep in mind, whenever I mention things, unlike maybe some other videos you might see, I will tell you where I got the information from. I will cite it because that's important. That way you can go look it up for yourself. So that line is attributed to this guy Chabrias. Now, in the ancient world, it bounced around and gets hung on other people. Not Alexander, though. Okay, Julius Caesar gets a version of it. Philip of Macedon, Alexander's daddy, gets a version of it. Okay. And whether it is deer or sheep or some other animal, that also shifts around in this saying. So this saying is a type that we call an aphorism. Okay? A saying, it's cute, it gets remembered, it's easy to remember because it's clever. And the ancients, just like us, appreciate wit. Okay. And that's why you've got these sayings. And in fact, in volume 3 of the Moralia, the Loeb edition, there's a whole lot of them. So we've got sayings of kings and commanders, meaning Greek kings and commanders. Then we've got sayings of Romans. Then we've got sayings of Spartans, sayings of Spartan women, and on it goes. There's even one on sayings of prostitutes. So they certainly loved these. And who says it? Whether it's in the sayings of Plutarch or whether it's in one of his lives, or if it's in another author, sometimes shifts. Okay. So we want to give this for the setting to a different person. And the way that I think this wound up getting attributed to Alexander is very simple. If you walk out onto the street today and you stop people and you say, "Do you know who Alexander the Great is?" Better than half of them would say, yeah. Okay. Do you know who Julius Caesar is? I'd say probably better than 3/4 of them would say, yeah. If you ask them, who is Philip of Macedon? They're just going to look at you. Most people will go, I have no idea. Okay. So we're going to move that saying. Okay? And Alexander, we'll give it to the son, not the father in this case. So that's how I think this thing shifts. So it's very interesting to look at aphorisms and how they move in literature. Now I'm going to go to one more here. Sex and sleep alone make me conscious that I am mortal. Or maybe a better rendering of the Greek is sleep and sex remind me I'm mortal. Okay. This comes from Alexander's or from Plutarch's Life of Alexander. And it may be a real saying. So I warned you in my tips for reading the ancient sources. I said, never believe the speeches. Okay. The speeches are not what any ancient person actually said. Sometimes we might get the gist of it, but they are the author making it up, showing their skill at speech writing. Same thing with long exchanges and dialogue. But every once in a while, maybe we can hear the echo of an ancient voice behind these short little aphorisms because people did like them and remembered them and thought they were funny. And maybe they move around sometimes, but there might be somebody back there who said something kind of like that. And this one might be something Alexander actually said. The problem is that folks are inclined to take this maybe a little too seriously. That is, it's used to show Alexander's self-control, which was important to Greeks. And the Greek word for that is sophrosune. So sophrosune means self-control. To be in fact, to be a good man, you should display sophrosune. And I'm using again man deliberately. When women are showing sophrosune, then they have they are a credit to their sex, right? Because the Greeks were very misogynistic. But here, some folks have used this to indicate that Alexander is in control of himself, and particularly the sex part of that. Notice they have flipped it. Okay, instead of sleep and sex remind me I'm mortal, here it's sex and sleep remind me I make me conscious that I'm mortal. So Alexander was critiqued for a lot of things in antiquity, including his temper and drinking. Sexual misconduct was not there. That's not really something we hear about. And in fact, sometimes it's used to paint Alexander as very sexually in control, maybe more than is really appropriate. Once more, this is a quote in Plutarch's life and is part of a general rundown of Alexander's self-control specifically whenever it comes to sex. But it's been divorced from whatever was the original context. And that's too bad because I don't think this is necessarily was said with any seriousness. This strikes me as I'm trying to be funny, okay? So more along the lines of perhaps friends complaining, you need to get some sleep. And him coming back with sleep and sex remind me I'm mortal. Yeah, blow it off. Akin to I can sleep when I'm dead. That's what I'm hearing in this, much more than anything else. And of course, sometimes people also utilize it to taking it too seriously of his aspirations to godhead, which is a subject again for another video entirely. And we'll talk about what might have been really claimed by the whole Ammon, son of Ammon thing. But yeah, I think it's a joke. I don't think it's to be taken too seriously, but I think maybe we really are hearing Alexander's voice behind this particular quote. So let's stop this share and I will read for you a couple of others, just a few other things out of the sayings of kings and commanders that in some cases I think might be close to Alexander's original voice. Okay. And one I'm going to read to you at the end that isn't. In fact, it's another example of how they move things around. So this is kind of a lesson in what do I trust in the ancient sources. So whenever Alexander was marching down the coast of Asia Minor, what's modern Turkey today, actually, he got to an area called Caria. And Alexander seemed to get along fairly well with older women. His mother, Olympias, the queen of Caria, Ada, Sisygambis, the mother of Darius, are all examples. And Ada decided to adopt him. Literally. So she adopts him as her son in order to make him king of Caria, and the Carians went along with this. But it says she also took a shine to him. Ada, queen of the Carians, made it a point of honor to be always sending him fancy dishes and sweetmeats prepared in unusual ways by the hands of artisan chefs. But he said he had better fancy cooks. His night marches for his breakfast, and for his dinner, his frugal breakfast. So it's a cute little saying. Maybe it goes back to Alexander. But once more, if you listen and you hear in that, it's all about sophrosune, isn't it? About self-control. I don't need the lavish fancy meals of royalty, especially Persian royalty. The Persians and also Lydians and some other areas in Asia were attributed with this kind of ostentatiousness. And even debauchery. I don't need this. I am sophrosune. I am in self-control. But it's an interesting little quote there that again maybe something lay behind it. Certainly not the moralizing to which Plutarch puts it later. Then we have two others that I want to share. Supposedly after his what would be his last pitched battle or set piece battle against Porus, the king of the Indians, and he wins. And Porus is brought before him. Porus, after the battle, was asked by Alexander, "How shall I treat you?" "Like a king," said Porus. Ask again if there was nothing else. Porus said, "Everything is included in those words." Marveling at his sagacity and manliness, Alexander added to his kingdom more land than he had possessed before. Again, I don't know if we're really hearing the words of Porus in that, much less the words of Alexander. but it's a sort of encounter that might stick in the brain. Okay. There's one more that again, I do think we are hearing the actual words of Alexander behind. The two big dogs at the court in Alexander's latter years are Hippaestion, his best friend, his lover, but more importantly, his chiliarch, okay, his second in command, um, and Craterus, who was the general who stepped into the shoes of Parmenion. Um, Both of these men were very talented, did earn their commissions. Never mind all that baloney about Hippaestion being a sycophant, etc. No, no, he was good at what he did. But there was unsurprisingly tension between these two fellows. And somebody at some point, when Alexander was commenting on his affection for Hippaestion, said, "Oh, but he loves, or you love Craterus as much." And Alexander replied to it, "Yes, I do." And he said, "Hippaestion is Philolexandros. Craterus is Philobasileus." So what does that mean? Philolexandros means the friend of Alexander, and this is his supposed boyhood friend with whom he grew up. I trust him. He's my friend. Craterus is a friend of the king, Philobasileus. Basileus means king. So he is the friend of the king. So he respects my office. And so kind of trying to settle things that way. So I think we are hearing Alexander's words behind that. And the last one here that I want to share, I'm sharing because Plutarch changed it. Okay. When he, Alexander, was hit in the leg by an arrow, and many of those who were oftentimes wont to hail him as a god hurried up to him, he, relaxing his countenance, said, "This is blood, as you see, and not ichor, like that which flows from the veins of the blessed gods." So Plutarch is using this, and in the life he goes on to add to that little say, because it appears in two places here in sayings of kings and commanders, and again in his life of Alexander. Alexander didn't take all of that divinity stuff seriously, you know. He even says he uses it, but we hear about this same saying again in Diogenes Laertius, who writes about philosophers and other such. And in Diogenes' writings, he not only says, Anaxagoras says this to Alexander, that's blood, not ichor, but he complains that Plutarch changed it, right? So it shows us, I think, here how the ancients, just like we, can take these little pithy sayings and change them, attribute them to somebody new, or in a new situation, use them. And it can be a trick to get back to what these people may actually have said. Is that something they actually said? And it may just sometimes be a sense of, from historians, a sense of, yeah, that I think maybe you're hearing their voice here. Certainly, I think with the Philolexandros Philobasileus, I would maybe not quite bet my next paycheck that it was Alexander's own phrasing, but close. Okay. The sleep and sex remind me immortal. I think that one's a good funny, and somebody remembered it. Some other things is hard to know, and certainly that's blood, you idiot. Okay, if you want to kind of paraphrase the actual Greek. Who said that to whom is a good question. Did Alexander say it, or did Anaxagoras say it to Alexander as kind of a reminder, know your place, fella? Okay. Um, but as I've said before, when you're reading the sources, you always need to think to yourself, who's writing this? What might be the point? How is that being used? Do I trust that when it comes to these things? So we'll end with that and take up with a different topic next time.